Hi, Beto Eddie here. How you doing today? Today I want to talk about. I made a top 10 list of my best rock albums of all time. My 10 best rock albums of all time. Now I have about 1,000 best rock albums of all time. I'm saying what is in my top 10? So it's a limited list, but it's a definitive list. It's what I think of the top from the top of my head. What I feel is the 10 best albums of all time, and I got a little added thing. I'm adding on the end one of the best live rock albums ever made. What? Okay, so this is not going to be in any order because all of them are great. There's not like the worst of the 10 to the best of the 10. They're all the best. They're all on the top 10, and they're all number one as far as I'm concerned. So when you listen to lots of music and you have 200, 400, 500, 1,000 different albums, and they're all great to you, then the top 10 is going to be all number one. So I'm not going to put this in any order. And I'm going to talk about it in a slight order that you'll see what I mean. Okay, now number one. Not that this is a top album of all time, but it's in my number one in my top 10. The Beatles, Sergeant Pepper. Now I have a few Beatles albums here. I can't call myself Beatle Eddie if I don't say some of the top albums of all time are Beatle albums. So I'm starting with Sergeant Pepper. Sergeant Pepper was made in 1967, and it's basically was an album that changed music forever. And before that, music was more like rock and rollish. This is more like studio um specialties, different kind of music introduced in it that they couldn't even do live at those years, in those times, in 1967. You couldn't do that live. Maybe you could do it live today with the technology they have. And, Paul McCartney, when he does his concerts, and nowadays, he does do some of these songs. So I think it could be done today, but in 1967, they just couldn't do this live. They were having a hard time doing a song from Rubber Soul, Nowhere Man. It was difficult. Paul said it was very difficult doing that on live. Can you imagine a Day in the Life or Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? Songs like that, doing these songs live in those years probably was impossible. So yeah, so they decided to go to the studio, and they made the first album they made, a complete studio album, blew people's minds. It changed music forever. So that's gonna be. I have to have that on my list for the top 10 albums of all time. Number two. Again, not that this is the second best album. They're all the best. Number two. A group called Led Zeppelin. And I pick the best, what I feel their best album. So, what I feel is their best album is Led Zeppelin 2. Led Zeppelin 4. Oh, excuse me. Let's cut that out. Led Zeppelin 4. Led Zeppelin 2 is great also, but that's not their best album. Their best album is Led Zeppelin 4. And not only because Stairway to Heaven is on it, not only because of that. It's just a great album all in all. It starts off with Black Dog, which is a great song. And Rock and Roll. And Battle of Evermore. They're all great songs. There's not one bad song on this album. Of course, Stairway to Heaven's on it. Then you got very, very good songs. Four Sticks. One of my favorite songs on the album. Mountain Hop. Very, very catchy. Very good song. I love it. And of course, when the levee breaks. No one is denying that this album is probably their best album. So, I mean, some people will say this. Other Led Zeppelin albums are better, and most people would think that Led Zeppelin 4 is the best album, the best Led Zeppelin album. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, a group that worked in Abbey Road for a number of years. When they made their first album in Abbey Road, the Beatles were making Sgt. Pepper in a different part of the studio. The group I'm talking about is Pink Floyd. And the album that I would call Pink Floyd's best, and on the best in the top 10 albums of all time, was recorded in Abbey Road. Dark Side of the Moon. Great album. Masterpiece. You sit down, lay in your bed, put your headphones on, drink your beer, put this on from start to finish. Never have an experience like this. Never. Great album. It's 50 years old. Great album. Okay. Number 4, The Who. What I feel is The Who's best album. I have 2 Who's albums here. They're both best. But I would say this is even better than the other one. Who's Next? So on this album, you have Won't Be Fooled Again, Barbara O'Reilly, Behind Blue Eyes, Bargain. It's just a great album. And, of course, Keith Moon was there. And, yeah, greatest Who album. That's number 4 on my list from top 10 albums, rock albums of all time. Number 5, The Rolling Stones. So what I feel is the Rolling Stones' best album, and of course a lot of people also do. Sticky Fingers. You know, the one with the pants with the zipper? Great album. Has Brown Sugar. Can't You Hear Me Knocking? Great album. Wild Horses, I believe, is on it. Oh yeah, great album. So that's number 5. Number 6, Queen. Queen made a few albums, but this is the most iconic one they have. The Night at the Opera. This is the one with Bohemian Rhapsody. Although Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't believe is their best song. Believe me, I don't believe it's their best song. It's a great song. Like there's another great song in this album, the Prophet song. And then, You got others. Death on Two Legs. The start of the album, Death on Two Legs. That was a song they made because they lost money in their first three albums that they made. Their manager kind of stole their money, and they didn't understand how they're making these albums, these good albums. Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack, great albums, all three, and they weren't making anything, and they didn't figure it out. Finally, they realized that their manager was stealing money. So when they made A Night at the Opera, of course they fired his manager. They got a new one, and they made the song "Death on Two Legs." It's all about the manager, and I guess they wished him dead. Well, they did. He was death on two legs. Okay. And other songs. I'm in love with my car. Love of my life. Great album. Just great album. Okay. Now, number 7. As I said, they're not really in order. This is not my seventh of the list from 1 to 10. That's number 7. I'm just making 10, so this is 7th from the 10. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. There's not a bad song on this album. Just a great album from start to finish. Probably their greatest album, their greatest accomplishment from their career. Okay, so I told you I'm going to have a couple of Beatle albums being in my top 10. I'm Beatle Eddie. What do you expect? I love the Beatles. And the Beatles changed music. They were the best band that ever lived, and probably to be the best band that ever will live. So there's gonna be a more than one album on my top 10 from the Beatles. Okay, number 8, the White Album, double album, the White Album, great songs on it. Back in the USSR. Dear Prudence, Why My Guitar Gently Weeps, Piggies, Birthday, What Are We Doing on the Road, Yeah Blues, Happiness Is a Warm Gun, Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill, Cry Baby Cry. I'm not going to say Revolution number 9 is a great song. But, it's something John wanted to do, and he did it, so he put it on it. But I think, they could have eliminated that. Maybe put Not Guilty on instead. That was a song George was working on at the time. And it didn't make the White Album. But I think that would have been a better album than Revolution number 9. Revolution number 1 is a slow version of Revolution. Revolution is the best version of the Revolution song. But, if you like Revolution number 1, it's a little slow moving and, it's slower paced. It's not like, Revolution is rocking. It's the flip side of Hey Jude. Revolution is rocking. That's the best Revolution. Okay, so that was number 8. Now I'm going to another Beatle album. Like I said, I'm a big Beatle fan. I gotta put some Beatles in, and they're iconic albums. I can't say they're not part of my number 10. Their last album that they recorded, Abbey Road. Great album. After, the White Album, George Martin, he thought it would make a better single album. And the Beatles weren't really working so much together when they were doing the White Album. They were sort of like four different solo albums that put together and called the Beatles. It's interesting. It's called the Beatles, even though they're less of a group than usual. So when they wanted to make Abbey Road, which is their last album, George said, "I'll only do it if you guys will get back as being a band." And they said, "Yeah, that's what we want to do." And it kind of surprised George. But so they got back in the studio and they made what some people feel is their best album. I'm a little partial to the White Album for many reasons. But many people feel that Abbey Road is their best album, even better than Sgt. Pepper. There's an argument, what's better, Sgt. Pepper or Abbey Road? People argue about that. A lot of people say Abbey Road. I mean, you have Come Together, you have Something, which is probably George's best song he ever wrote. You have George's Here Come the Sun. You have the melody of Paul, the big melody. The Sun King melody is also good. And, it's just a great album. Okay? Now, I'm going to close it with my number 10, another Who album. And I put it here because although I feel that Who's Next is a better Who's album, probably the best album they ever made, this album is a must for a rock and roll album, and it's a rock and roll opera. You all know what I'm talking about by now. It had to be in the list. Album that changed the world, changed music. The Who, Tommy. The original Tommy, not, the Broadway show or anything like that, or the movie. The album, Tommy, with the green, with the bluish green, whatever. It's a great album. It's a double album, I believe. And it's just great. I mean, it's like the first rock opera. It's great. So those are my 10. Sgt. Pepper, Led Zeppelin 4, Dark Side of the Moon, Who's Next, Sticky Fingers, the Stones, Night at the Opera, Queen, Rumors, Fleetwood Mac, the White Album, Abbey Road, and the Who, Tommy. That's 10 albums. Okay, now I mentioned that I'm going to put in a little extra. I'm going to put what I feel is the top live album that was ever made. Now, there's lots of live albums. I love, Wings Over America. I feel that's a great album. Queen Killers is another great album. It's live. Phantom Live. A lot of people say that's a great album. It is. It is a great album. I don't think it's the best live album. What I would say is the best live album, and here's my little bonus, because I already gave you the 10, but it's my best live album. What I would say is my best live album is the Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore East. Double record set. Made in 1971, I believe. Has their, the greatest hits from their first 3 albums. And it's a great album. It's, it's history. The Allman Brothers at the Fillmore East. It's history. There's no more Fillmore East. It's a great album. The greatest live album. Alright, so that's what I have to say for today. Those are my 10. my 10 top albums of all time. I hope you agree with my list. If you don't, everyone has their opinion. You're gonna have your own opinion. Put in the comments and let me hear what your opinion is. What's your top 10, or even your top 5 or top 3? You know, like to hear. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe. It helps the business going. All right, take care. Bye.